Hi. I thought I'd take a few minutes and just talk about construction loans. Construction loans are just very specialized versions of a home mortgage. They work a little bit different, but the end result is fabulous for those that want to build a new home or do an addition or renovation to their existing home. So essentially, with a construction loan, your bank is going to appraise your house, the plans of what you're planning to build, based on its current value for the lot, maybe the existing home if it's a renovation or addition, plus whatever the completed value of the changes that you're making to that home. So the way that they work is they essentially make the first fund to either buy or acquire your lot that you're going to build a new home on, or if it's a home that you're going to do an addition or renovation, they pay off your existing mortgage. And so those are the first draws. And then from there, they may have multiple draws after that that are, in a new home, there might be four or five draws. In a addition or renovation, probably fewer than that. But anyway, what happens is your contractor will do some work on the house. If it's, let's give the example of a new home, if it's a tear down, they've knocked down the existing home, they've dug the hole, poured the footings and the foundation, the concrete, if you will, for that home. They've probably framed the home, so all the lumber and the framing labor, put the roof on, probably has shingles and hopefully has windows, although in the current environment, sometimes windows are a little bit delayed. But at that point in time, your builder may go in for the that first construction draw, that first draw after the lot has been paid off by the first portion of that construction loan. So at that point in time, your builder will prepare a contractor's sworn statement, and they will provide that to your bank, and your bank will look at that. It will list all of the components of building your house, all the major components, and it'll identify here's what the builder anticipates the cost for each of those items are, and then here's what they want to draw against those for the items that labor and materials that have been installed within your home. So, what your bank will then do is they'll send an inspector to go to the project, and they'll look at the project and verify that the items that your contractor is asking to be paid for have been complete or at least partially complete. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. So, when they're going, the inspector isn't there really to evaluate the quality of the work, just simply that, okay, the contractor is asking to be paid for the concrete that was in the footings and the basement foundation walls. So, is that there? Also, the framing. So, is has the house been framed up? Is the lumber there? Has it been, you know, built into the frame? Is the roof on? Are the shingles there? So that's what the inspector is doing, is just verifying that the things that your contractor is asking to be paid for have been complete. From there, the inspector will send a report back to the bank, and then the bank will fund that particular draw to the extent that the inspector is agreeing that they're complete. And typically, what happens from there is your bank will wire the funds to an escrow agent, a construction escrow agent. In our case, we use Chicago Title in Lisle, Illinois, on Warrenville Road there. And so your bank would send the funds to that particular escrow agent, and the escrow agent's role really is to look at each of those draw requests and prepare checks to be paid out to either the builder or the subcontractor that have worked on those, or the material suppliers. And each of those entities would come into Chicago Title or the escrow agent, the construction escrow agent, and they would provide a document called a waiver of lien. And they come in two flavors. It's either a temporary or a partial waiver of lien or a full waiver of lien. And it just depends on kind of where they are in the process. So, for example, if it was to an electrician, the electrician, when building a house, they first come in and they do what's called the rough. So that's putting the conduit in and the boxes, maybe pulling the wires, but generally not installing the light switches or the outlets or those things, because the painter doesn't want those in there when they're doing the painting. So the electrician might come in and say, let's say their total contract to do that, to provide all the electrical, was say $10,000 for the project. So at that point in time, early on, the electrician may come in with a partial waiver and say, "Hey," essentially it says, I have a contract to do the electrical work on this house. The contract is for $10,000. So far, I've done $7,000 worth of work, which I'd like to be paid for now, with the other 3,000 to come later when I've completed that work. So that electrician or whatever the trade is or the material supplier come in with that document. That would be the example of the partial waiver of lien. And they would provide that to Chicago Title, sign off, and in return, Chicago Title or the escrow agent would provide the check in that particular amount. And the whole idea for this waiver of lien is that when you're all done, you don't want a subcontractor or your builder or whomever to come back and sue you or say, hey, I wasn't paid for this particular job, please pay me now. This is the process and the document that keeps that from happening. So the work continues on. The house is completed. The electrician then comes back with his final waiver of lien, and that simply says, okay, I had a $10,000 contract to do the electrical work on this home. I've already been paid for 7,000. There's 3,000 left, of which I've completed that work. I'd like to be paid. And so they present the final waiver of lien for the electrical work. And that document is almost exactly the same wording as the partial. The main difference is at the top, it just says final waiver of lien versus the partial. And when you get down to the bottom, it's, the numbers are netting out to, um, upon that payment, the electrician is no longer owed any money for that particular job. So anyway, that process goes on in a custom home, probably three or four, maybe five times over the course of the build. And each time you're getting closer and closer to the finished home, until at the very end, what happens is every trade, every supplier, material supplier, and the builder, they all come in with their final waivers of lien, and they get paid out through that process, all funded from your bank. And so it's a really smooth way to go. With the construction loan, during that process, while it's going up, generally these loans are interest only payments, so you're not paying any principal during that construction time, but you're making a monthly interest payment to your bank. Um, Once the house has been completed, the final draw has happened, then typically the loans will turn into they'll go from the construction phase of the loan into a more permanent type loan. And typically these would be the equivalent of a 30-year amortization loan. And you can get them with fixed rates that are either fixed for the entire 30 years, or it could be a 5-year rate, a 7-year rate, or a 10-year rate for the loan. Sometimes those loans balloon at the end of those 5, 7, 10-year periods. But the better types of loans, they don't balloon. In other words, come due at that point in time. They simply just reprice to whatever the current interest rate is. And I'd say most of our clients are going for, say, a 7 or a 10-year um, rate on their construction loans versus the entire 30-year, because they know that although many of them say, hey, I'm building my forever house, the reality in America is every 6, 7, 8 years on average, people move. They have job changes or health issues or whatever it might be. But um, anyway, that's essentially how a construction loan works. Note that construction loans are much different in kind of the details of how they work than a normal mortgage. So we'd recommend that when you work with your bank, or when you pick your bank, and most banks don't do construction loans, but certainly there's a lot of them that do. But when you pick whatever bank that is, make sure that the loan officer that you're working with is highly skilled and truly knows how to work their way around a construction loan. We've seen it time and time again from, uh, well, we work with a number of banks on these types of things, but several, a number of times we've seen the situation where, the bank is really good at processing. However, the individual loan officer, in some cases, don't have the skill set or the knowledge to make them work, and it just becomes a difficult situation for both us and for our clients. So, if you'd like some recommendations of really great construction lenders in the Chicago metropolitan area, reach out to us. We'd be happy to share 2 or 3 names of people that we think are particularly skilled at doing this. And alternatively, you can also get that information from our second book, the What to Expect book, that's available through our website. Anyway, that's all I have to say about it today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and be happy to respond and answer any questions that you might have. Thanks so much. Have a really great day. Bye.